Motivation Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Every Monday we bring you inspiring conversations of people, who have found purpose in life, people who have overcome great things, people who are, doing something to give back into the community. And today is no exception. I don't know about you, but sometimes you start moving in one direction in life and you're thinking, this is the way to go. This is what I want to do with my life. This is it. Unafika mahali kwa junction. And your life is turned around and you find yourself doing something you never thought you would do. Like me here in the studio. I wanted to be a graphic designer. I went to college, did graphic design, finished, even started my own business. What am I doing in a TV and radio station? But it's not about me today. Today we get to hang out with the CEO of Mirema School, Nina Mutegi. Nina, how are you doing?
I'm very well, James. How are you this morning?
I'm alive and kicking, my friend. Glad to be alive.
Beautiful singing, the joyful song. It was lovely to hear you sing it.
I'm excited to host you on Motivation Monday today. I know your story will inspire a lot of people. I'm just wondering, so here you are, CEO Mirema Schools. Is this what you thought you would end up doing?
Definitely not. This was not on the cards. This was not in the plan. This is something completely different than what I thought my life would be.
So let's go back in the day when you had this plan. What did you aspire to be and what were you training to become?
Okay, so ever since I was a little girl, I remember one time one of my uncles was unwell and I would go to the hospital with my aunt and my mother. And that was when the seed of wanting to be a doctor was planted in me. So from a very young age, I told everybody I want to be a doctor. This is what I want to do. And of course, that's a noble profession for any Kenyan parent. So everybody was really encouraging me. Yes, Dr. Nina. And so from when I was young, they would call me Dr. Nina. And that was the dream that I built from about maybe the age of 6, all the way up. As I was growing up, the dream was to become a doctor.
Okay, so did you actually begin to pursue that dream?
I did. So I went through school. I finished all my education up to secondary school in Kenya. And at the age of 17, because I didn't get the grades to go into medical school in Kenya, back in those days, the standards were very, very high. And I missed it by a couple of points. And unfortunately, then we didn't have the option of parallel courses. So I decided, I worked with my parents and we decided that I would go to India to do a pre-med degree. And so at the age of 17, I went to India, to Delhi, to do a pre-med degree. So the dream started there.
Was this your first time out of the country?
I had been out of the country once before with my dad in Form 3, but I had never been anywhere by myself. So Mom took me, settled me into a little space somewhere, bought me one cup, one spoon, one plate, all of that. And then she came back and I was by myself.
Wow. How was life in India? I'm thinking maybe you went through quite some culture shocks there.
Absolutely. What I know now, I think life is what you make it. And it was definitely very tough. It was a very, different environment. The weather was extreme. Sometimes it would get very, very hot. The culture is completely different. The food is different. So I took a while to settle in, but I was young and I think I was quite resilient at that age because I didn't have a bad time in India. India was not a bad experience. Actually, I made some great friends while I was there who are still very good friends of mine even now. So the one thing I regret about India is I did not learn Hindi. Yes, I could have learnt it and I wish I did, but I didn't make any effort to, which was a shame.
How long were you in India?
I was there for 3 years.
Oh, okay. 3 years. 3 years.
So I completed the pre-med degree there and I was all set to go into medical school. I had a tutor who had helped me organize for a school somewhere in South India. Now, proper medical school. But at that point, things changed and my parents didn't have the money to pay for medical school. But I think at the time they were also hopeful that I would move to, somewhere better. So we recently had a relative who was working in South Africa. And I think at that time the thought was, let her come back. We'll figure out the finances and maybe she can go to South Africa. So I came back after my degree.
Okay. So now you come back, you have this degree. What do you do with your life as you wait for this other opportunity to open up?
So that is where things got tricky, actually, because I realized there was not very much planning around how the transition would happen. There hadn't even been many conversations with this relative about what it's like in South Africa. So considering we were having financial challenges at the time, South Africa was far more expensive than India. So the dream of going to South Africa soon crumbled. And I went into a very sad space. I remember just being very unhappy. I was very, very disappointed with my parents, I'm sorry to say, because I felt that they hadn't planned. But of course, now I'm older and wiser, I realize that life happens so dynamically that sometimes your best laid plans don't come through. So the dream shattered and I was just hanging around in Nairobi doing odd jobs here and there and volunteer work, really nothing serious. So I was not a very happy Nina at that stage.
Okay. Did you feel at that stage that your dream had come to an end, or were you still optimistic that something will open up and you will eventually end up becoming the doctor that you wanted to become?
I was hopeful, only I couldn't see the way that would happen. So I was hopeful that, something would, a miracle of some sort would happen or, something. And I didn't know how, but I was still hopeful at that stage.
I'm just wondering, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have one sister who is 3 years younger than me. And then I have a younger brother as well, who is 14 years younger than me. So my parents had their plate full with bringing the others to school as well. So, but at that age, your worldview is yourself. Everything revolves around you. Yes.
Wow. So, sometimes when you're in a situation like that, you look at probably some of the people you went to high school with or you are in campus with, and it seems like for them their life is moving on. Nothing much is happening in your life. Did you go through all that, and how did you manage those emotions?
Absolutely. And you see, I think you're constantly comparing yourself with people who seem to have it all together.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the saddest things about life, if you don't understand that it always looks that way. Even now, there are people who seem to have a picture of a successful life. Their social media just looks like they're just having a blast every day. But the reality of it is quite different. And what made a difference is I've always had quite good friends through the years. So I had one friend who kept me quite grounded at that point. And for her, life was quite difficult as well. So we would wallow in our sadness together. we would cry and be unhappy together. And then, of course, life evolved and I had the opportunity now to go to the UK.
How did that come about?
That came up through another friend, actually. So he was quite, I don't know if the word is exposed. His mind was much more open than many of us. And so, huyo alikuwa ametembea kidogo. So he's like, you can go to the UK, you can get a job. And I'm like, I can get a job. Because in India, there was no actual option of working. You had to be a student and you were 100% reliant on the money your parents sent you. So when he talked about going to the UK, at first it was like, be serious, that's just out there. And then the idea started to form. And actually, unfortunately, I remember at that time, I really was in a space where I wanted to go and perhaps make a point to my parents that, now you guys, you let me down and I went to the UK and I've done all these amazing things. Very childish, I know, but my excuse is that I was young.
You're forgiven.
Thank you, thank you. I have asked for forgiveness many times from them, so they just watched me. So once that opportunity came, I remember I went to the UK embassy to get a visa, and I said to them, because I had prior to that I had applied to a medical school in the US and they had accepted me. So I had paperwork showing that I'd been accepted to the US. So when I went to the UK embassy to get a visa, I told them, look, I've got an admission, but it's almost 8 months away. So I am going to the UK just to pass the time and maybe do an ICT course. And this is where God works, because when I think about what it takes to get a visa now, I can't believe they said yes.
Wow.
I can't believe they said yes. But another phenomenon I've noticed in my life is sometimes when you don't want something or you think you don't want something, and it is the path you're meant to take, the doors will just open, you know, for you. So when they called me that afternoon and said, yeah, here's your visa, I was shocked.
Wow.
I was not even sure if I was happy because I didn't know clearly what the next stage would be. Yeah. So off I went to the UK, and now that's a whole new season in my life. I didn't have very much money. Mom had scraped some bits of cash together and, you know, done this shopping. I remember we went to Gikomba and bought all these, you know, heavy jackets and things for cold weather because Nina, it's very cold there. And so off I went with a suitcase full of, you know, unga and winter jackets.
Unga.
You know, your mothers are mothers.
Yes.
My baby cannot be hungry.
Oh,
so
my
unga
goodness.
and jahez, you know, a couple of things like that.
Wow. So you get there. What did you have somebody who you're going to stay with? You know, did you have, I mean, I'm just thinking, you land then what?
James, I tell you, that's just a whole miracle. That's just a whole miracle. Because when I went to the UK, my mom had a friend who she had interacted with, you know, some years before. She had been a neighbor where we lived. This was pre-mobile phones, so it was not easy to get hold of people, and sometimes you'd call someone, they don't pick up, they call you, you're not there, you can't even tell they called you, there were no SMSs, so I'm not even sure how the communication used to happen, but somehow Mom found out where this lady lived and called her, and she gave her, you know, where her address, where she lived. And so once I came off the plane in London, I took a taxi. So I had all of like 200 pounds with me. And I used a black cab, which cost me over 40 pounds to get from the airport to her house. Looking back on it, that was the worst decision because that kind of money was a fortune to me for many years. And so I get there and she's not there. But fortunately, somebody in the house let me in and told me that she'll be back some hours later. So about 5-6 hours later, she comes back and she's like, "Oh, hello, who are you?" And I introduced myself and she's like, "Oh yes, your mom mentioned you're coming." And she lived in a tiny little room, like the space after you had a single bed, the space that was left was less than a single bed.
Oh my
goodness.
She
lived in a tiny room. And this is where I spent the first maybe 5-6 months of my time in the UK. And actually we would sleep in turns because it was such a tight space. So she would do the night shift and she'd come back and sleep. And I would make sure I walk around and just keep myself busy so that she could get some rest. And when she went to work, then I would go and sleep. So like many people's stories, it was very, very tough. The first couple of years were very difficult. I finally got a job. It was working in a taxi cab stand. And I was working with these very, very aggressive gentlemen who, because I answered the phone with a Kenyan accent and I'm trying to figure out, okay, this person wants a taxi, where are they going? So they would name a place that I couldn't understand. And so I would ask them to spell it, and it was a problem. I'm telling you, the first couple of weeks was just tears in that job because I didn't know places.
You know, I'm just thinking, here you are, you had a dream of becoming a doctor. Now you are in a taxi company. I'm sure sometimes you would wake up
Yes.
and wonder, how did I end up here?
Yeah. Well, at that point, survival mode just kicks
Yeah.
in. I need to get my share of the rent. I need to get the next meal and the next meal. So on and on that went until what happened? So I ended up enrolling in an ICT course because I needed to keep my visa going.
Yeah.
So during that course, then I met some Jamaican girls who were on the course with me, and they were filling out some forms one day, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? What's happening? And they said they are applying for nursing. At that time, the UK government was really looking for nurses, and they were giving bursaries. And so I picked up a form and I filled it and I got in. And lo and behold, I became a nurse.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes, yes.
Wow. Okay. You're closer to your goal.
Now I started feeling like I'm getting there.
Yes.
And I think maybe since my story is supposed to inspire other people, maybe I should also mention that along the way, there were scenarios where there were promises, because people who met me, I would tell them, this is the dream, I want to become a doctor.
Yeah.
And I remember this gentleman telling me, okay, if you marry me, you'll get a British passport, and then I will help you get into medical school and you'll become a doctor. And I think I want to share that because I think for many young women, that's a trap we often fall into.
Yes.
Where you are promised things, and sometimes the dream seems bigger than the sacrifice of, making a poor choice. And I'm so glad I didn't fall into that. And I won't say it is my own wisdom. It is just the grace of God, because I was tempted. And there were many other tempting scenarios as well, where, you're promised money, you're promised gifts, you're promised papers, And I'm very, very grateful to God for His grace in steering me away from that. Because for the people that I knew who went down that route, it was usually a happy story.
Wow. This morning we get to hang out with the CEO of Mirema School, Nina Mutegi, sharing her journey and her story with us. Maybe you identify with some of the things she's sharing. Maybe you had set your life to go in one direction, in one career. You even went to college and trained for it, but it's not what you're doing right now. We are hanging out with Nina Mutegi, CEO of Mirema School, on Motivation Monday. Rose, how are you doing? You say you always dreamt of being a doctor. You had A levels, you passed well in both arts and sciences, but had to leave the science chance to those without a good arts combination, though you stayed with maths. Ended up as an accountant. Somebody told me I'm using the caring aspect as I care for the flock when ministering in the office. Good for you, Rose. Thank you very much for your message. John Gidanga in Nakuru, quite an interesting and inspiring narrative. Thank God you didn't fall into that trap of getting married to that fellow. Yes, indeed. Evelyn Miranja, you wanted to be a lawyer, but you're managing things. You've learned a lot. Asante sana. Keep texting in. So, back to your story, Nina. So here you are. Now you are a nurse. But anyway, how long did it take you to finish the nursing course?
So the nursing course was 3 years in total. I did the diploma to begin with. So, and then later on, because I had the degree from India, I was able to do a master's in nursing later on. So the first bit took me 3 years, and then the second bit took me 2 years.
Ooh, so now you are a nurse. Were you fulfilled as a nurse?
I actually was. I am a good nurse because I'm still a nurse. I don't think it really ever goes away.
Yeah.
That element of me, I think, it's very much a part of who I am. Looking after people. So usually I'm the kind of person that will see something that looks disorderly, messy, unwell, and just want to clean it up. My patients always looked super.
Yeah.
I was very proud of the fact that when I went with my patients to X-ray, they'd be like, "Hey, your patients are on point." Now, those are the things you measure in the nursing world. Does your patient look comfortable?
Yeah.
Are their sheets clean? Are they looking well? So I think I was a good nurse, and I enjoyed it. Yes.
How long did you do nursing in the UK?
So I did that about 15 years in total. So I did quite a lot of, when I did the master's degree, it really opened up a lot of doors for me. I was working on a ward and I went up the ranks within the ward. And eventually I had the option to become a ward sister. But at that point, I was kind of getting a bit tired of working on a ward. Plus, my health was struggling a little bit because in the early days, I was doing so many shifts just to make ends meet. And here's another thing. I think because I come from what is perceived to be a well-off family, and we're okay. We're not rich, but we're okay.
Yeah.
There was the assumption that there was a lot of support from home, but the reality of it was that it was me on the ground, making things work. And sometimes I notice people can get a bit bitter about that. Why wasn't I helped? A little bit entitled. That seems to be quite a common narrative nowadays. And I think the thing I want to say about that is you have the option to work your life the way you want to.
Yeah.
It's up to you. So I embraced it, and I didn't have anybody else, to pay school fees for or to do any of those things. But I was ambitious and I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to do different things. So I worked a lot of hours in the early days. And I ended up having some damage on my back because of lifting and turning patients. I worked in HDU. So a lot of my patients were either unconscious or semi-conscious. So I needed to make a decision to move away from the ward. And along that journey, I ended up having a baby. So I wasn't married at that point. I was in a long-term relationship and I had my daughter who is 16 years old now.
Wow.
And so I had to make some choices around how much time I could spend with her because we're living in London. There are no house helps there. It's very difficult to organize childcare. In fact, my childcare bill was pretty high.
Yeah.
So I had to make choices, and I left the ward and I was working in an insurance company for a while, talking to patients on the phone, where I wasn't doing physical nursing, but I was still doing shift work at that point. Then as my daughter grew older, I had an opportunity to take a job that was totally life-changing. I was working for a company that was doing patient support programs, and they set up in the UK, and they gave me the job, and I had the opportunity to travel through Europe setting up patient support programs. So I really had the opportunity. People used to ask me, are you still a nurse? You're going to Germany again, you're going to Spain again.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic. That was great fun. It was difficult to coordinate as a young woman with a young child still, but it was a fantastic opportunity.
So how long did you do that?
That I did for 4 years. And along the way, so the relationship with my daughter's father came to an end, and I got married. So I got married to another gentleman, but I had a child already.
Yeah.
Now, that was where things got tricky. That's where things got tricky.
How?
The marriage was tough. Here I was traveling all over the place. And my ex-husband, I know was not very settled in himself in terms of who he was and what his career path was. So over time, he stopped working. He wasn't working for many years. And that was difficult. Even now, when I speak to women, I know the challenge of your own career and life seems to be moving. And then here you are with somebody who is struggling, and it puts a lot of pressure. And so without really, going into that much detail about it, eventually we just got pulled apart, and I had to make a decision to walk away from the marriage, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Wow. I'm just curious, so what brought you back home? Because it seems like from what you're telling us, man, your career was in the skies. You are almost in the third heaven. How did you end up coming back home?
So I came back home because of the marital breakdown. It was, I had left that high-flying job about 2 years before I came back home. And so I realized then I got another job, which I really did not like. I did not enjoy that job at all. I was more available. I was at home. I was working from home, but the job itself did not inspire me at all. So, and I think it wasn't just the job. I think it was also my personal life at the time was not going well. So I was unhappy. And actually looking back on it, many of my friends were like, Nina, this is not good. I realized when I came back home, I was actually depressed. But I didn't notice that I was depressed until I started coming out of the depression. And my daughter would be like, oh, Mom, you're smiling. And I'm like, I didn't realize I was depressed for a long time until I came back home. So I made the decision to come back home in the middle of that messy, end to a marriage. And I decided to do that because I was feeling trapped. I was feeling like, what's coming next? I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I've gotten married. I had bought a house even before I got married. So I was supposed to be living the dream. I was supposed to be enjoying everything, but I wasn't. And I was one of those people who never ever planned to come home. I had settled abroad. I'd been there for a good 20 plus years.
Wow.
And I was not planning to come home. And I think this is where God sometimes intervenes, because I remember just thinking, what if you went home? What if you went home? And within a year and a half of that, I was back.
Wow. You were in the UK for 20 years.
Yes, I was.
Now, how could pick the accent? Some people, they go to the States or the UK for 6 hours. They come back talking through their noses. You were there for 20 years and I can't even pick a trace of the British accent. What happened?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how people pick up these accents, because number one, I should have an Indian accent.
Yes.
Because of and then I should have a British accent.
Yes.
So I think if you hear me speaking to my British friends, you might hear it more, because there you have to change how you speak a little bit so they can understand you. But I'm just a Kenyan girl.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about how you ended up at Mirema School. That's the part of the story I've been waiting to hear, so we'll get to that in a bit. If you have any questions for my guest this morning, 20316 is the SMS line. And Stella, you say hi to Nina. We are proud of her. She's doing an amazing job at Mirema School. Asante sana. Nina, back to you. So, at what point does Mirema School come into this story?
It's coming. And apparently this is what I was being prepared for through many of those experiences.
Wow. Okay.
So I come back to Kenya with my baby, who was in class 4 at that time. And what I can say to anybody transitioning from another country coming back, you need to give yourself, number one, come back with everything you can, all your stuff, if you can, because it's much harder to settle than you realize.
Yeah.
And then give yourself like 2 or 3 years before you settle down, because that transition was not easy at all. So if there's someone who has the British accent, James, it is my daughter. So she came in and nobody could understand her for a long time. But if you listen to her now, she sounds pretty much like me, but still much more British.
Okay.
So we come back and we are, trying to get into the space of, okay, where will we live? My parents have a home, but I see, for somebody who hadn't been at home, had left home at 17, living with my parents felt, wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
So I moved out, but I moved literally across the road from them because I needed a lot of support. You can imagine, I left at 17, so I'd never been an adult in Kenya.
Yes. I'd
never paid a bill in Kenya. I had never. I was now an adult in Kenya.
Okay.
So I was so well supported, and when I think back on it, my siblings really were key to that transition. My parents made sure I was safe, I was okay, and because that was directly opposite Mirema School, I had the institution nearby, so I was always, well looked after, and I thank God for that so much. So I came back and I decided, because I had also now, after I finished the master's in nursing, I decided to do health psychology.
Okay.
I was always very interested in why people make the health choices they make. You know, if you've been told that you shouldn't smoke, why do you still smoke, even though the packet tells you smoking kills? So I did the health psychology course, which was the first course that I not the first, but you know, when all the courses I had done were because I needed to survive, I needed to push myself up the career ladder. But health psychology, I did it out of interest. It was 100% just interest. So I came back and I was all excited, and I'm going to change things here. I'm going to make things better. And I started a healthcare company where I was doing home care for different people, mostly with multiple sclerosis, because I'd also specialized in MS. So company started off well. I got quite a few referrals, but it was tough. It was very tough because I was the beginning and the end of the company. So I had a couple of other people who I brought on. A good friend of mine was doing physio, and I met different professionals along the way, and we were looking at patients at home. Hey, business in Kenya is tough. It's very tough. I soon understood that. And then at the same time, my sister was running the school, and I could see she also needed some help with the work, because our school is a very, very busy environment. So we agreed that both of us were doing our side businesses, but we would also input into the school.
Okay.
Until
Who founded the school?
Well, the school was started by our parents. So my parents started, Mirema is coming up to 25 years old now. So mom and dad started the school, and then my sister joined them to run the school. And then they started moving out, especially when I came back. They started moving out of the school and, you know, doing a bit more retirement-related activity, farming and traveling more. So Lorna and I, my sister and I, were running the school for some time. But I soon realized that that wasn't going to work, because the healthcare business is very demanding, and I was the only nurse on staff. So that was really demanding, and I was trying to do all these things myself, trying to organize therapy, trying to organize meds, trying to run Mirema. And I soon realized I wasn't going to be able to do this well in any direction. And so I made the decision to put the healthcare business on hold and to focus my attention on Mirema School. And that was how I landed in Mirema School, which has completely taken over my life in a good way.
Okay. You know, earlier on you said that all these things you had to go through, you know, are really training for what you're doing now. How where's the connections? Show us the dots.
So the first dot is resilience, pure resilience, you know, just being able to push through on a difficult day, being able to push through a space you may not know. I'm not in education, but I'm having to learn very quickly what academics works like, what the operations of a school works, you know, how it works. And so resilience is the first thing. And then the second thing is just basically good old hard work, hours. When I first got to Mirema, I put in a lot of long hours. It wasn't unusual for me to leave work at 3 o'clock in the morning. The night guard knew me well. Oh, madam. When I left at midnight, he's like, "Hey, leo umetoka mapema." So, you know, just pure hard work and being able to go into the detail of things. So nursing and my career up until that day, working in the West, I got to learn how systems work. So especially in the job where I was doing a lot of traveling, I had to do a lot of, you know, looking through data, looking for patterns, setting up ICT systems, so working with ICT teams. So the benefit for me was just pure exposure amongst many other things. But because I had seen countries where systems work, it was easy for me to visualize that things can work better in Mirema School. And I just threw myself into that. So basically, we are talking about putting the systems into place. But my core mandate as the leader currently is to separate the family from the business. So for the longest time, because my parents live on site, everything was together. If you bought bread, it was bread for the school and bread for the house. So if there were 10 loaves of bread, you ask, okay, where are we with the bread? Or you collect our main house. So then you don't know whether you're being lied to. There's a lot of people who will eat the bread, take the bread away in the meantime, because you don't have system. So my biggest mandate was to separate the business from the family, and then now to strengthen the family and to strengthen the business.
Wow. So how long have you been heading the school?
So I've been the CEO. This is my second year as CEO, I believe. It's been quite a transition. Sometimes I struggle with exactly what the timelines are, because now my sister has moved to her own business. She started a training school. And so I'm the CEO of the school at the moment. And I've been working at the school since I got back 6 years ago. It's coming to 7 years now. Initially, I was working in finance, and now I've transitioned into CEO role.
Wow. Looking back, would you change anything?
Oh, that's a hard question, James. Yes. Okay. You know, there were many pain points. There were many painful moments. There were many, low moments. But looking back on it, I wouldn't change it. And what I always say is that pain is what propelled me sometimes into the next level. And I always say pain comes for a reason, and don't waste it. Use it. Let it push you to the next level. You don't know what season God wants to move you into. And sometimes if he doesn't make it uncomfortable, you'll stay where you are.
Very true. Very true. What would you tell those people who may be listening to us today, and they're at that place where they feel like their dream is shattered? And sometimes people get to that place where what they wanted and what they thought they want to become, all those are closed. People sink into depression. Some people commit suicide. I mean, it can be a crazy space to be in. So for somebody who's in that space today, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, don't limit God. Don't limit God. We have our own thoughts about how life should be, what we want, but God's plan is ultimately much bigger and better than our own plan. Because you asked me about fulfillment. Am I fulfilled in the current job I'm in? Absolutely. Absolutely. Am I making a difference? Yes, a big difference. Am I making an impact? Absolutely. So I can see God's hand in it. And even if you can't see it, just trust that there is something better that is coming along. Very often we want things how we want them. We have to understand in God's family, it's not a democracy. He calls the shots. So you have to be his child and just embrace each season as it comes, and don't waste time. So if you're in a season that doesn't feel comfortable, make the most of it. Learn something, learn a skill, learn a lesson, make a friend, get a network, and then it'll come in handy for the next season or the next step that is coming along.
Okay, one final question, 15 seconds. When Nina is not working until 3 a.m., what else do you do?
Well, I have other interests. I love watching movies. That's my downtime.
Our time is also up. Thank you so much, Nina, for finding time to talk to us and share your inspirational story with us. I hope you have been encouraged and challenged by that story. My friend, keep moving. God has something in store for you. That's all the time we have for Motivation Monday today. Until next week, have yourselves a great day.
Thank you for watching. Remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get notified whenever we upload new fresh content every day. Stay tuned and enjoy fresh, uplifting content.